everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Overland Talk of the Delta. This is, once again, Nathan LiQWYD, and
I'm Seth.
And we got Seth Smithy with us here today. Our podcast is now being shown, or heard, or listened to, however, whatever you're doing to this podcast. You can now access it from Anchor, Spotify, and as well as Apple Podcasts. So, just throwing that out there real fast. If you use Apple Podcasts, it's out there too if you use that. Well, Seth, to start off, the last time we talked to you was right after our Christmas trip. I think in, what was that?
A year and a half ago. That'd been 2020.
I believe it was 2020, yeah.
2020.
And we've had 2 Christmas trips since then and a couple spring break trips.
Right.
Last time we had you on here, you had just taken your brown truck out there, and it had its newly installed diesel engine.
Right.
And you done blown it up.
Yeah, it didn't last as long as I was hoping it would. So we talked about it in the last season show a lot more in depth, but basically I've got a 1990 model Ford, which most people know as the brick nose front trucks. It started life as a 3/4 ton long wheelbase 4-wheel drive pickup. Basically, to sum it up, I turned it into a dually, lowered the front rear end gears, a little bit bigger tire, a little bit of lift in the front and back. And the biggest thing I did was I pulled the 351 Windsor out of it and dropped a 7.3 International diesel in, which is backwards of what most people do because those engines were not real powerhouses, and they just, they were good engines, but they didn't make a lot of power. But I really like them because they are very unique, and it's what I wanted for that truck. The problem was the truck I pulled that motor out of had already had a lot of miles put on it. Motor had a lot of wear and tear. It wound up starting to leak a little bit of water, so I wound up tearing it down and putting a head gasket kit in it. And I don't know if the valves didn't get ground, or the head didn't get ground good, or if the block wound up warped or what. But anyway, when I put it back together, it made it about 50 more miles before it dumped a bunch of water over on one of the cylinders, and it just hydro-locked going down the road. So the block may be salvageable, but I've already knocked it in the head. I wound up buying a little bit newer ambulance.
Well, before you get into too much details there.
Okay.
So that's just where we were last time.
Right.
Well, just recapping real quick on our little Christmas expedition daily excursion we had.
Sure.
For us, for Mitchell and I, it was a day and night, but for you, it was I might tiptoe out there with a 4-wheeler, and we'll just start off with why you decided to do a 4-wheeler, and we'll just say it was 20-something degrees that day, snowing, and this dude meets us out there with a 4-wheeler.
Well, let me just say that if you're not in Arkansas and you're not familiar with Arkansas, the weather's kind of crazy at times, especially during the winters down here. And when I checked the weather, I really didn't know it was going to be that cold. And since we were just going for the day, I was already having to make a trip with another load of Little Rock, and I had room for a 4-wheeler, so I thought that'd just be a good way to go. And we like to froze our butts off.
They got out there a little early compared to we did, beat us out there about maybe 30 minutes or so.
Oh, 30 minutes an hour.
And by the time we got to them, they couldn't move fast enough to get inside of the heated vehicles we had pulled up at the top of the mountain.
I kept thinking if I'd go fast enough, the friction off the wind would warm me up, but it never did.
I don't think it works that way. Well, after which they ended up we got camp set up and we made lunch. And how'd you like that grill?
Oh, you're talking about your new propane grill?
Yeah.
Man, I really like it. Was it 2 or 3 burners?
It was 2 burner.
I like that a lot. Had a little table and it's plenty big, and put a nice big fire out. You can put a big pan or a little pan on it. It really doesn't matter. It's plenty capable of whatever you want to cook on it. I really thought that was neat.
Yeah, that was my Christmas gift for this past Christmas, and that to me is the neatest thing I've gotten for camp so far.
Absolutely.
Eventually, we might be talking about a trailer we're thinking about building.
Right.
And eventually, I think it'd be neat to put little brackets on the side of the trailer to where I could mount that grill on the side of it instead of using its legs. Either way, I love that grill.
Yeah, we've kind of kicked around a lot about what to do about building a trailer, and I know we talked about it, and I think last season we might have done a whole show on it. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I think we have.
We've
changed 3 times since the last time we talked about it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. We've started this project 2 or 3 different times, and we've talked it every way possible, and it seems like we do a lot more talking than we do actually doing. But I think we've got a decent plan. We've got a pretty good pile of parts put together now, and all we got to do is get a little time up and just finish the job. So, looking forward to that.
So, that was this Christmas break. 2 Christmases ago, you had your diesel and brown truck.
Right.
Christmas in between, you showed up with one of a pair of fire trucks, military fire trucks that you had acquired.
Yeah, that was another deal I kind of got into. I did a little bit of trading around, so I can't remember what all I did, but ultimately I wound up with a pair of M1028s, and those are CUCVs, and I'm horrible with acronyms.
Oh,
is that the word? Civilian Utility Conversion Vehicle or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, basically what it was, they took square body Chevrolets, which is what they were. I think I've got an 83 and an 85 or an 84 and an 86, identical trucks except for the years. And what the military did, they took these civilian vehicles and they spec'd them out a little bit different for the military, whatever they required the truck to be, and then they put them in the service. And I wound up with a pair of those. So what they are, both of these, to my knowledge, are the same. They are a 1-ton single rear wheel, long wheelbase, single cab Chevrolet pickup truck. It's powered by a 6.2 liter non-turbo, indirectly injected Detroit diesel. It's got a 400 turbo 3-speed automatic transmission behind that. Then the rear end and front end gears, I believe, are 456s, so it gets down pretty low in the gears. It'll pull anything in the world, but of course without overdrive, it won't do it with any kind of speed. And then one of the coolest things about that specific truck, as with many military vehicles, it's got a 14-bolt, as far as I know, a 14-bolt GM rear end in it, but it's got a full locking Dana locker in the rear. And then the M1028, which is the truck I have, came with a positive traction front end. So that really makes a difference when you get into soft terrain and mud and going up and down hills. It kind of causes a little bit of trouble when you're pulling a load on asphalt. The rear end kind of wants to lock up and it gets a little squirrely. But if you kind of know what to expect and stay away from that, they really are good, reliable trucks. I've enjoyed them very much since I've had them.
And while we were out there that one day, we accomplished snapping one of the axles.
Yeah, we did break it.
But after further inspection, you kind of determined it might have been a little broke before we brought it out.
I never did really figure out exactly what happened, but it was not a clean break when it broke. I think the axle probably had a little bit of cracking, maybe from a previous injury. I don't really know what happened. What broke it? We were maybe found a trail. Didn't look like
a big hole
used.
that ate half the truck.
It was a mud hole, and Nathan's little brother was driving, and I told him if he was going to get off in it, he better be wide open on the floor and don't let up till you get to the other side. But he eased off in it and got us good and stuck really before I had a chance to even spin the tires good. So I didn't want to pull it because I was going to have to climb out of the truck, so I wound up just rocking it forward and back and got a little bit excited, and I snapped the front right outer axle. And of course, when it come unglued, it took the hub and the locker and all the grease inside out with it. So
which is really funny is because we were recording that on our phone, and in the phone you can hear whatever, I think it's the end of the hub, you can hear just running out through the woods.
Yeah, it shot off like a...
We thought we'd heard something, but we thought it was a rodent running away from it. But we didn't realize we had done broke it until we were like 30 minutes down the trail, and Seth got a phone call, and Mitchell and I are sitting there leaning up next to the truck, and I look down and see this oil rolling out of it, and I'm like, "Ooh!" And then I really looked at it, and I noticed the axle had backed out about like 6 inches or so, and I'm thinking, "Oh, that shouldn't be like that."
No, we broke it good for sure that day. I knew it had quit pulling. I didn't realize how bad it was, which it wasn't catastrophic failure. We still rode on it all day long,
Yeah.
and of course, I didn't drive it to Little Rock. I hauled it on a trailer, mostly because it wouldn't run fast, but it would have been fine to drive because it didn't destroy the bearings or anything like that. It just broke an axle.
So because of it breaking, you kind of used that as an excuse to beef it up a little bit. What kind of are you thinking about planning on with that?
Well, it's the trucks, of course, were military vehicles. I actually wound up doing a little swapping around, and I got those off of a local volunteer fire department, and they had repainted the exterior of the truck. They rhino lined it with black and red, like bed liner. They really look pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty good job on
They
it.
don't look nice. They're very rough and rugged trucks, and they look tough, and that's what I like about them. So obviously, I'm going to fix the broken axle. I've got 2 of them. They're both going to be good trucks when I get done with them, but I've never really had a big jacked up mud truck before, and I don't really necessarily want one now, but I've actually done a little trading around and acquired a set of 395. I can't remember the exact dimensions of them, but it's the big Michelin tire that the 5 and I believe 10-ton military trucks run. And I don't know exactly what they measure, but I think they're rated at like a 47 or 48 inch tire, maybe even 49. I can't remember, but they're huge. Probably way too big for this truck. I don't know that I'll ever get there, but I've had it in mind for a little while now that I'm eventually going to jack one of those trucks up and get those big Michelins under it. Just something to mess around with.
I have a funny feeling we might be retipping this truck occasionally.
It's possible.
Well, you touched on getting a hold of an ambulance that has an engine that you're thinking about swapping back into, Sarah.
Right. So as I was saying before, the 7.3 indirect injection international motor was the diesel engine before the first Power Stroke. Again, that's not a real powerful motor, but in my opinion, it's very reliable. It's a sturdy motor, and I just like unique. And there's not that many around anymore, and that's just what I wanted this truck to be. So I wound up picking up a little bit newer ambulance, but it still has a 7.3 IDI in it. It's got less than half the miles of the first one I bought, and I think it's been a little bit better taken care of.
So you should get twice as far down the road before it explodes.
Well, I'm hoping. And I say, the last engine was short-lived. I don't know that it made it a year, but in that year's time, I got a lot more work out of it than what you should normally put a 7.3 through. So I'm not disappointed in what happened, and most of it was my fault anyway. I shouldn't have been pushing it as hard as I was, but it was a lot of fun to drive, and I really loved the way it sounded, and I stayed on it too much.
The bed of that ambulance has a pretty nice interior inside of it still.
It is, and after this past weekend, we've actually kind of got a little plan together for it too. Me and my dad are into rock crawling, and we've always in the past just gotten motel rooms or done whatever when we were camping. Another thing I've done a little swapping around and wound up with, I've got a 40-foot low profile gooseneck trailer, and we're kicking around the idea about taking the bed off of the ambulance and converting it into a sleeping quarters. Nothing fancy, of course. It won't have a shower and a commode or anything like that, but just a place to sleep and store some dry goods and grill or something like that. And we're going to mount that on the front of my trailer, and that way we can carry our sleeping area and our Jeep or whatever we decide to take behind us, and then we don't have to ride in separate vehicles or travel apart.
Well, you just mentioned it, and one of our past episodes last season, you talked about y'all's whole sport of going rock bouncing and whatnot. Y'all have recently acquired a new true rock bouncer.
Yeah, we've kind of stepped up in the game in that area here lately. So we started out with, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was a 92 Wrangler. And it's not all a 92 Wrangler. It's got some CJ parts in it, and it's got some YJ parts in it. We bought it in boxes and more or less glued it together. Wasn't anything special. Had a little 4-cylinder engine in it. It was fun as a dickens to drive, and that's just what it was. Then maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we stepped up a little bigger, bought another 92. And it had a 350 small block in it, throttle bodied. And it was a little better setup. Had a 488 in the rear end and a 35 in the front. I think it was sitting on 39.5-inch tires. A little bigger, a little bit more fun. But it was at the point it needed some work. It really needed axle stretch front and back because it was so top heavy sitting on those tall tires. And we kicked around the idea of really kind of fixing it up, making it nice. So we got to looking around on some of the different sites online, and we found down south a sure enough rock bouncer, a buggy. I have not verified this for myself. The gentleman we bought it from said that it had a Toyota frame under it. It's about 6 foot, and that's it. Everything else is tubed out, welded up. It's got a full cage. I mean, really, it's not nice, but it's very sturdy, very tough. It's got a 6-liter, a 6-liter Chevrolet motor in it. I believe, if I understood right, it's got a 2nd stage Texas Speedway something. It's supposed to be better heads, bigger cam, and headers. And if I understood the man right, it's supposed to be turning just a hair over 400 horsepower. It's coupled up with a turbo 400, and then it's got twin transfer cases in it. It's got a 203, 205 doubler, which gives you a gear reduction of right at 4 to 1 when you get both transfer cases in low range. So that gets you some really, really slow, low down crawling gears. And then, if that wasn't enough, it's got a pair of 2.5-ton military Rockwell axles under it, which I think have got up in the 600s in their gears alone. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's low. It's rear steer, so it's got steering axles front and rear. And of course, both those have full time lockers in them. And then it's sitting on a 49-inch IROC. It's not a sticky or anything like that, but when you get a tire that big, you can run, a pound or 2 of air in it, and it'll grab onto just about whatever you set it on. So.
But it also takes forever to get that pound or 2 air.
Oh, it does. It's a big tire, holds a lot of air. But we've only had it out one time so far. Got a few things we'd like to change about it. But I think this is going to be the one we're going to keep. It was a lot of fun. I felt very safe in it. I put it in a couple of really bad spots, and I never did feel like I was going to turn over or anything like that. So we sure did have a lot of fun with it.
I can't wait to eventually go out there with y'all and try it out, because it sounds like a blast, and I have never gone into that kind of experience other than the one time you pulled me up over a little baby hill. Yeah. In the black Jeep.
Well, when we got down there, this off-road park was in. It was also down south of here. They had a bunch of earth moving, the great big earth moving dump truck tires laying around. They had a couple of them in a stack, and I'm gonna tell you, this stack was probably 8, maybe 9 foot tall. And I just walked the front tire up on it, and when I got done, my back axle was sitting level with the ground. My front axle was turned probably 80 degrees from level, and that thing was sitting rock solid. I was pretty giddy.
So, about a couple weekends ago or so, we started the beginning of the semester, and my brother and I brought up the leftover scraps of his pickup truck. I'll put it that way. Last episode we talked about how Mitchell and I had converted his pickup truck to a flatbed, and in the whole deal, we got his truck bed to now make a truck, pretty much a truck bed camper out of. We're planning on taking that bed. We have an axle and frame that we're thinking about putting together. But this is what Seth was mentioning, how we've been talking about this overlanding trailer that we're been wanting to build for years now, and we finally have a path that we're thinking about going down.
Right, yeah, like we were saying, we talked this thing 100 different ways, and we've started it 2 or 3 different times, but I think we finally got enough parts to make it go. So what I've got is a 3/4 ton Chrysler rear end out of something. I don't know what. It's 8 lug, and of course I've got tires and wheels laying around. We'll figure something out for that. But I have a long wheelbase Studebaker frame that is really, really close to your little brother's.
It was almost
truck
perfect.
bed. Yeah. So we'll have to do a little bit of mocking up to make it fit, but I don't think it'll be any big deal. But we're basically going to build a camper out of a 8-foot Ford pickup truck bed. We've already got a camper shell sitting on top of it.
Yeah, a buddy of mine gave me a camper shell for Christmas. And oddly, the ironic thing about it is that he has a 8-foot, I think, Dodge or GMC over on his property that he was trying to see if he could part out. And he's planning on taking the rear end of it and making a camper trailer out of it as well. Now he's looking for an 8-foot camper shell again.
Uh-oh.
And he just gave me that one.
Well, we don't know what happened to his last one. So.
Well, his wasn't a white bed either. Ours at least matches our bed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got a white camper shell and white bed. So that's a good thing. But I've also picked up a aluminum pull-out drawer for a truck bed. I've never had one before. I've never used one, but for if you're going to carry a lot of stuff in the bed, it's actually really, really nice. What it does, the drawer pulls out, it pulls out over the tailgate, so it lays in between the fender wells. And what it does, it gives you the ability to reach everything all the way to the front of the bed, because you can roll it out, and you can also build on top of it, and it's, it gives you a platform to build off of. So what we're kind of talking about doing right now is mounting like a freshwater tank or something up toward the front of the bed, and then above the water tank and this pull-out drawer, we're going to build a flat platform for cots or a chuck box or just dry storage.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we've got a lot of parts and we got some pretty good ideas, and if we can just get some time together, we'll get this thing built up.
As far as getting it together and in one piece, to me is the easy part. Being sleepable is going to be pretty manageable. But we had been talking about potentially insulating a bit of it.
Right.
And you had the idea of some spray foam.
Yeah, I got the idea from a job we'd done a few years ago. I didn't realize with closed cell spray-in insulation how little of a thickness you actually had to have to create a pretty suitable temperature barrier. Laying in insulation in a wall or putting blown in insulation in an attic, I've always seen that in 8, 10, 12, and even 18-inch depths, so I just assumed it took a lot. But with spraying insulation, like I say, closed cell for sure, open may be a little different story. 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches will do wonders.
Probably more than what we'll need out there.
Absolutely. I don't think we're going to try to air condition this thing necessarily. We're more winter campers anyway.
Yeah.
In fall, of course, but anyway, we're dealing with cooler nights. I think if we can get this thing decently insulated, it won't take anything hardly at all to keep it warm at night.
So, one thing that I think would be kind of neat to see if we could accomplish. So on the driver's side of that bed, it has a front and rear fuel cap door.
Right, because it was on Ford truck. Right.
Well, on the front one, since we're thinking about potentially putting the freshwater tank at the front, we've kind of thought that it'd be neat that inside the front door or fuel door, you had the input and output for the water.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And then in the back tank, or the back hatch, we've thought about building in, I don't know if you would necessarily call it ductwork, but it'd be neat. So we're thinking about potentially getting a diesel heater. And the warm air tube, instead of like having it hang out of one of the windows, be neat if we could put in a little bit of a just vent system maybe, that you could just hook up the hose into the rear fuel cap, and that's how we got heat into the camper.
Oh, okay, and then put a couple ducts up through the floor or something like that.
Or something, yeah.
I'm with you. Okay, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Keep it hid and keep it looking good.
Yeah. Another couple things we kind of kicked around is potentially giving it a little bit of a roof rack. But that all depends on if, one, we think it would support it, and if we had decided to put stuff in other vehicles at that point. Do you think that'd even be feasible?
Well, I remember unloading all that stuff, but I don't know how tough the camper shell was. We may have to may have to build us up a little skeleton off of the bed and then like truss across it or something for a roof rack. But sometimes camper shells do have some support structure under them where that would be a more feasible option. But I don't remember.
Yeah. When we get this kind of to where we want it to be, what do you have in mind for it?
Oh, well, I kind of listed all of my good ideas. Getting the built's what I'll be is going to be in my wheelhouse. Once it's together, it's kind of going to be in your hands to figure out how to make it nice.
So, just real fast, because you've had a couple different types of experiences with us out there. Is something like that to you? Would that be annoying to carry around out there? Would that be something you would want to leave us at camp, or you wouldn't think it'd be a problem carrying behind you?
Oh, I mean, like anything else, the more you add to yourself, the more troublesome it's going to be. There's some places we've had to turn around; it'd be kind of tied in. I don't think we've been on any trails that it couldn't go with us. We'd be dragging limbs is about the worst thing I've seen down there. But there's also, I've seen a lot of really pretty campsites. I'm not opposed at all to running around during the day and coming back to the same camp every night. Was it last year we went across the state all the way into Oklahoma?
That was the
year
one
before
back in
that.
2020.
Okay. Which I thoroughly enjoyed that trip. I wouldn't want to have missed it. But I've also been out there where we stayed in the same campsite, 2 or 3 nights in a row, and I enjoyed that just about as well as I did running every day and going long distances. So
right. Would any extra fuel ever be an idea you would have to carry on the trailer?
Oh yeah, you're always going to need fuel if you're going a long time.
Would that even be something like? So something I thought about that is, that truck would have had its fuel tanks underneath that bed in the first place.
Sure, they would have sat on the frame, and as a matter of fact, if we would use a Ford frame, we could use Ford fuel tanks and put it right back in there. We just have to build some sort of transfer pump to get it back out with a little faster speed than what the truck pumps would have been originally. Even with a Studebaker frame that we're putting in it, I'm sure we could fasten a tank under there somehow, and that might even be, put the correct Ford fill neck back in and hide that behind one of the fuel doors as well.
True, yeah, that too.
But sure, you want to have some extra fuel, but you're going to run into some dangers there. If you're heating the camper that you're sleeping in and you're carrying 30 or 40 gallons of gasoline underneath it, yeah, there's a bit of a danger there. So I'd certainly want to weigh all my options before I made a decision. But yeah, that's absolutely a feasible.
Oh, what would you think about running propane lines on
it? For heat and for cooking?
Or mainly cooking?
You just look at a standard camper that a lot of people have for whatever use. Typically, you're going to see a propane tank sitting on the tongue of it, and it's going to have a line that runs underneath, and you're going to have one coming up for a heater inside, and whatever your cooking appliances are. So yeah, I've got a couple of campers sitting around that are parts. We could certainly rob some material off of them and integrate a propane fuel system.
Well, you have been in the market of buying new campers in the last year or so.
Well, I don't buy nothing new.
New to you.
New to me.
So tonight we're recording this in your mansion of a camper.
Boy, I got a nice one now.
Is this anything you think you would even attempt to pull out there in one of those nicer camping sites?
Absolutely not. I can't even pull this one up my driveway. It's so tall.
I was about to say, the camper before this, other than the shape it was in, you probably could have gotten away with.
Well, it was a good camper. What took it out? Have we talked about it on this show? I don't think we have. So I bought it. Well, I bought it from your family.
Yep.
It was your grandparents, I believe.
Yep.
I think, if memory serves right, it was a 19-foot camper, maybe 20. It wasn't real big. It was really comfortable for two people. You could sleep three, but you was always, walking over somebody, stepping on a toe here and there. But just to go, get away for a couple of days, it was great. I loved it. Took it out several times. But what I did not know was it had been set up for several years, and some water had made its way down the sidewall. And I was going down the interstate one summer day, and I looked back, and I could see the bed in the front of the camper out my side view mirror. Come to find out, the glue and the sawdust that makes up the wall of these campers had turned loose, and the front wall peeled out of the camper. And, of course, that did some other damage. And being an older model and having the issues it did, it just insurance totaled it. It wasn't... It was going to cost twice to fix it is what it was ever going to be worth. So luckily I had put insurance on it. That was kind of a funny story also. But anyway, I did have insurance, and they paid well. And just so happened, not a week or maybe two later, I found a much bigger camper. It was a little bit older. It had been used, but I think now that I've seen both, I would prefer to have one that I know has been used and been pulled, as opposed to having one that's been shut up and set out for years at a time.
Right.
But it's a 36 foot. It's a fifth wheel with a gooseneck conversion on it, which doesn't really matter. I pull goosenecks. That's what I've got, so it worked out good. It was already set up for me. But it's a toy hauler. And I did it a little bit different than most. Of course, it's not big enough to put a full-size vehicle in the back. The garage is only maybe 12 or 14 feet long. But it'd be great for side-by-side, a couple four-wheelers, motorcycle, dirt bike, whatever you want to carry. But that's not typically what I do or have done or plan to do. So what I wound up doing, I had a full-size bed, and I bought just a pair of twin metal folding bed
racks or frames.
Yeah, bed frames. Put the mattress on it. I made a whole nother back bedroom out of the garage. Then I did a little bit of finagling, got heat and air back there, and of course lights and everything else. So it's really nice now that I've got it all fixed up and like I want it. We've been out in it 2 or 3 times now. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it greatly. So
now, right now you have a bummed out brown truck. You got a fire truck with a broke axle. 4-wheeler's a little cold.
Yeah.
So right about now, what is your go-to vehicle for spring break trip?
My go-to vehicle for spring break. Well, I'd like to get some of this broke down junk running. But the way things go, the way my work schedule is, and unexpected calls here and there, sometimes that just don't happen. Right now, I've been driving a 99 GMC. Kind of another unique motor. It's got a 6.5 liter Detroit diesel in it, which was the next engine after the 6.2 liter. This one is turbocharged, and it's got an ECM on it. So it's a little bit more integrated, but it's still the old school indirect injection. It's pretty easy to work on, and not the most powerful motor, but it's leaps and bounds ahead of the 6.2, and I've really had a lot of fun with it.
Would that be something you would take out there for a camping trip?
Oh yeah, given the right circumstances, I believe I'd make it out there. It is a 2-wheel drive, but it came, and I didn't know this. I found the window sticker in the glove box after I bought it. It's actually got a locking differential in it. I did not know that a 1-ton or a dually had that option in those years. But I tested it out a little bit. I got one tire off in the grass, and I chained the bumper down where it couldn't move. And once it spun just a little bit, it grabbed the tire on the asphalt, and it spun all 4 back tires. So
Well, there you go.
I don't plan on using that a whole lot, but it does go better than most 2-wheel drive trucks do.
So with Sarah, are you pretty set on the ambulance motor to be transferred into it?
Oh, I'm never set on nothing till it's done. I've had 3 different motors that I've threatened to put in that thing over the last 8 months or a year. Oh, it hadn't been that long.
Oh, it's close.
I think the 7.3 is probably what's going to go in it. I'm already set up for it. It'll be a real easy swap out. Bolt for bolt, everything lines up. The other 2 options that I had, I've got a 6.9 liter international engine, which was before the 7.3. The benefits of this motor is the head bolts have already been converted over to studs, and it was fitted with a Banks Sidewinder turbocharger on it. So it was another one that needs a little bit of work, but could be brought around pretty easy. And then I've got a first generation Dodge. It's got a 12 valve Cummins in it. I had really decided that was the motor that I was going to put in my truck. I've had that one a while. The truck's no good. Transmission shot. I mean, everything about it's swarming, except for the motor. Of course, I don't know. I left it sitting, I know, over a year. Went out and put a hot battery on it, and I don't think it rolled twice and was running. It just, if it's got fuel in it, it's going to start. That truck's always been good about that. But I got to looking around, and it was to buy the adapters to put that motor with my transmission to fit my truck. It was going to cost more than adapters than the whole truck was ever going to be worth. So I kind of shied away from that and figured I might find something else to do with it one day.
So if you got her running back again, would that be what you go back to riding around out there with us?
Oh, absolutely. That's my number one truck. It's my favorite. Always has been, always will be.
Have you ever, I know you're not really into this as much as I would say Mitchell and I are.
Sure.
But is there anything you would ever modify specifically for camping?
More so than we do now?
Yeah. Like if there was anything you would specifically do your truck for camping, like would you ever build something to put on the back of your truck as another sleeping quarters, or
well, I guess that kind of comes back around to the camper we're building. Well, one of the first ideas we had, I picked up a military pintle hitch trailer. We're going to build our camper out of it, but because I'm not into this big time, and I didn't want my trailer being tied up just for camping. We only get to go 2 or 3 times a year at the most. That's kind of what got us off of that trailer. So as far as making modifications to my truck, no. But I wouldn't mind to make this trailer specific for camping.
Right.
And one thing I'm big on, and it's because I'm an electrician by trade, I love LED lights.
I'm right there with you. I got lights before rockers on my Jeep.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't talk about this already. But I absolutely want to put a battery bank on that trailer.
Yes,
I want to set it up to where it'll charge off the truck when we're driving throughout the day. Maybe even put a solar panel on it if we can catch some sunlight here and there.
But say my buddy Mark of mine, he just got a camper shell to put on the back of his truck.
Right.
And he's got, or just happens to already have, 2 really big solar panels. I think are going to take up most of its roof.
Absolutely. But I want a big battery system, and I want lights all over this thing. I want to hit a button and light up everything around it. I like to be able to see. I love being able to work under the light. It's one of those conveniences that I'm willing to go the extra mile to make it right on.
But say for as often as we come back from riding around to camp for dinner in the dark, that would be very handy. So that way we could just back our Jeeps and trucks up to where we're going to get ready for the night, and we don't have to have our Jeeps and trucks running with their bar lights shining forward and whatnot.
Well, I got the bug real bad about flatbeds after I bought my first one. I don't know how many I've got now, but all of them have got work lights mounted up on the headache rack.
Yeah.
And it lights, and I lay every one of them out the same way. I've got different lights I bought throughout the years as technology advances and gets better, but all of them I've got a couple lights shining on the bed to light up the worktop, and then I've got 2 shining off on the ground so that I can see the ground around it, and I love every one of them. I don't know what I'd ever do without it.
See, Mitchell's got 2 on the back shining down on the bed, And occasionally he'll turn around to face forward because he doesn't have any forward-facing LEDs, but he has two underneath the rear bumper facing backwards as reverse lights because his truck didn't have reverse lights. And with it having LED reverse lights and our Cherokee having an LED reverse light, man, I wish my Wrangler did, because those two little gimpy lights on the back, on the tail lights of that, do nothing in the middle of the night out in the woods. Heck, I can barely see it light up the parking lot when I'm back out of it at my apartment.
Absolutely makes a difference. No doubt about it.
But yeah, if I definitely had the extra, that definitely put a couple more on that Jeep. But I will say sometimes it does look a little funny having a 50-inch bar light and LED lights and A-pillar lights in its stock.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like to be real flashy. I like the more hidden lights. I don't want to go nuts with it, but I do like a lot of light.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to wrap her up there. Definitely been a little bit of unorganized or organized chaos, if you want to call it that. Been here, there, back around, and come back again, and added to.
I don't think this even qualifies as organized chaos.
Either way, it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Definitely welcome to come back around later down the road. And thank you all for watching. You can catch us again here on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Once again, next week, depending on how these shows come out, they'll pretty roughly be once a week. But thank you all again for watching, and we'll see y'all in next week's episode.
Have a good night.